Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another podcast. My name is Glenna Vilmanarang. To those of you who are here for the first time, I would like to welcome you to Solish Farm. And today's topic, it might be late, better late than never. I actually had a struggle thinking of what to discuss on this subject about healing, because on this channel it's about prospering body, spirit, and soul. But today I would like to particularly talk about what are the signs of why you might be struggling when it comes to your healing journey and your ability to be awakened from the matrix system. And I will just like to tell you a preface to say that don't give up. Healing is possible. And so we don't really want to talk about our problems all the time, but it's important to know the signs that you are not behind if you have these signs or symptoms. Number one, you feel as though you always have excuses. One of the signs that you're still struggling about your healing journey is that you are actually have many excuses. You will tell yourself or talk yourself out of something that you want to do. For instance, if you started something like losing weight, and then you constantly have the same excuses that you can't lose weight because maybe you don't have time, you're too busy. However, you're not aware of how you spend your time on a daily basis. You are most likely convoluted when it comes to your priorities. Maybe you scroll on your social media often than not and watch more TV. And so it's not that you don't have time, it is about allocation of your time. It is being mindful of where your time is going. And many people are not even aware that there are so many things that are competing with our attention today. If you're not careful, you're going to squander your time by sitting idly doing nothing instead of just maybe 15 minutes in a day to start your day walking or whatever it might be, scrubbing your toilet, vacuuming, mopping the floor. And then another sign that you might be struggling with your healing journey, that you're on your way to your recovery, if you really are aware of these signs, you're easily tired and you're easily sick. When we are not feeling good with our body and we're not attuned to ourselves, we feel lethargic, we feel easily sick because, of course, we feel tired maybe because we don't have enough sleep at night. We don't take a nap if necessary. We are overly exhausted because we're too busy doing nothing. Sometimes we think that we're exhausted because we have so much in our plate, but actually we're just exhausted because we're overly stimulated. As I said, again, it all goes back to your scrolling mindlessly on your Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media or platform that you're currently using right now, and then easily sick because maybe you're not drinking enough water. Your immune system is very low because you don't have the kind of vitamins that your body needs to replenish your body. And if you are not really aware because you don't take care of your body, because people that are struggling with either depression or they're not healing completely yet is because they're not willing to invest the things that are good for their well-being. Instead of helping themselves, sometimes we eat a lot of junk food. We are prone to grab and drink soda and chips instead of really understanding why do I feel this way. But sometimes we numb our pain by doing those things that's actually not really helping us in the long run. Another sign is being disorganized and scattered, unfocused, your environment, your workspace. You don't even know where your pens are. You don't even know where you place your stuff, and you are completely scattered brain because you have this ability to focus because your brain is not functioning well. Why? Because you don't have enough sleep, you're not eating the right food, your body is not feeling well. And so if you're not focused, you cannot possibly function at the optimal level. And we all know that when people are disorganized, it is not just a physical too, it is more than a spiritual. There's something that's happening within their soul. There's a disassociation, which is my next point, of when you are dealing with your old trauma and you are trying to connect the dots of why do I feel this way, feeling down and always feeling sick. Maybe because you're also trying to figure out about your life. You're trying to see whether you are still the person that you were yesterday and today. Maybe you're trying to figure out if you want to have the same career, or you're trying to reconsider if you want to stay in that career or maybe change a different path in your life. That could be another reason why sometimes the old self and the new self are trying to merge, but there's always going to be a conflict with the two. As I said before in my podcast, when you're trying to heal, there are going to be three different people that are going to show up. Persons, actually. The number one was, of course, before the abuse. And then the one that will eventually show up is the one that was in the abusive relationship. She was volatile, aggressive, and not really peaceful, chaotic. And then the third one is the new one. So there's not another version of you that is going to simultaneously show up when you're trying to figure out who you really are in the process. And what this Tim Ferris, I think is an actor, right? It says that, but you are the average of the 5 people you associate with most. So do not underestimate the effects of your pessimistic, unambitious, or disorganized friends. If someone isn't making you stronger, they're making you weaker. And this is what I've been saying before, according to Jim Rohn, that he actually said the same thing. Like the 5 people that you surround yourself with are going to make you or break you. Because it is true. You are your environment. You are the people that you hang out with. If you cannot replace people in your life, you can actually limit your time with them. You can not say that you should cancel people, but you can actually find other like-minded people online. It's easier now more than ever before. There's going to be social media. There's going to be things that you can probably do. Join a group of, maybe if you like to read, a book club. Or if you like to garden, there's also a gardening club, I think. And so these are the things that you can actually try to search online to find the same interest with people. Because as I said, if you're motivated, you're most likely to going to be motivated by the people that you surround yourself with. But people that are surrounded with you, they're always pessimistic and tired, and there's always excuses. Most likely, they're going to bring you down. But you cannot make that as an excuse for not doing anything, something different with your life. That's not an excuse for not trying. So yes, maybe the people around you are not as motivated as you. They're not as ambitious as you per se. However, it doesn't mean that you should be like them and not try to find something that you would like to do. And then it also says by Marilyn van Derbur, ever knowing why I made sure whenever possible that nothing passed between the compartmentalization I had created between the day child and the night child. This is something to do with a healing journey. Again, she said about there's always going to be this compartmentalization between, again, as I said before, the child that you were before the abuse that happened is going to show up, and that other person that was actually being abused. It is a compartmentalization of your brain is trying to figure out which one you are. The only reason why, one of the reasons why, not just the only reason, one of the reasons why I was able to survive the abusive relationship when I was in my teenage year is because I learned how to compartmentalize. Compartmentalization is separating yourself of what's happening on the inside in your house and what's going on outside. So as I said, I use fashion, I use clothing, I use style to dress myself impeccably to be able to blend in or to pretend as a cover-up that everything was going well with my life so that I could have a normal teenage years. That was compartmentalization. So you're trying to separate your real self from the real thing that's happening inside of your house. Actually, it's not really real. It is kind of like a facade. You're living a facade life, a masquerade. You put on this outfit to go to school when I was in high school, pretending like my life was okay, unbeknownst to the people or my friends around me that I was actually being abused. So that is what you call compartmentalization. You're trying to you play a role so that people are not going to see you in a different light or have this kind of imagination that you're actually struggling. Because majority of people, sometimes we are good at pretending. We are good at trying to cover up the things that is happening deep within our soul and heart. That's why we put a makeup on, we dress up a certain way, and we don't really know what's happening behind closed doors, unless of course that person is willing to share to you or be transparent of what is truly happening behind closed doors. But majority of us, especially when you're young, you have the tendency to keep the secret with yourself because of fear, because of maybe shame, and maybe because you're trying to protect your reputation, that if somehow you are going to share the secret or the abuse that's been happening inside your house, then you probably were thinking to yourself, what are my classmates going to say? What do you think they're going to think of me differently? That's why it's so hard to be a teenager, and at the same time there's an abuse happening in your house and there's nowhere else to go and no one else to talk to. And this is what I've been struggling. And maybe I wish that when you're a teenager, you had enough courage. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of teenagers right now who are struggling with the same abuse. And then they feel like they're alone in their journey. And they have no one else to talk to because there's no one really to understand how they're feeling or taking them seriously. Again, it's because of fear. It's because they are trapped in that situation. And I pray and I hope that there are kids today that are brave enough to go and ask for help or to seek out an adult to help them willingly and to get out of that kind of situation. Because when I was in that state of my mind and my stage of my life, I was really unable to get out because I was afraid of the consequences. And at the same time, I don't want to linger here. You also have to understand that the struggles of trying to heal is that you lack of motivation, no ambition or goals. So when a person is still struggling with depression, or he or she is in the midst of trying to recover from the pain or trauma from her childhood or his childhood, you really have no ambition. You completely had just given up in life. You are just a person that, like a Groundhog Day, waking up, going back to work maybe, and you go back to sleep, and you feel as though, what's the point? What is the point to having ambition? What's the point of having motivation? What's the point of living my life anyway? I mean, there's really no point. You somehow become apathetic. You've probably decided one day that might as well just give up because my life is already ruined. I have really nothing to live for. So you have this, as I said, the pessimistic point of view. The things that you used to enjoy, maybe you used to enjoy playing sports before, maybe you used to enjoy reading a book, or maybe you used to enjoy going to the gym, and all of a sudden all of that has diminished and you are lacking of the grit or lacking of the drive, and something is not right. And when that happens, as I said, it's because maybe there's something deep within your soul that's happening. Either you're not feeling well on your soul, you're still trying to manage your emotions. I'm not sure really what's happening. It's actually between you and yourself who figure out what the heck is happening. And another sign that you're still struggling is that you're easily triggered. Everything around you, whether it's a small comment, a side comment from people, whether it's a conversation, you get easily triggered. I know this because I used to be one of those people before, way back when I was completely aware that why was I triggered and easily snap over the little things. As I said, healing is not a one-night journey. It is an ongoing process. It is an ongoing journey. You're not going to arrive in one day. It takes years. So do not really have an expiration date on when you can be easily triggered. From time to time, I am still easily triggered. It is because you have not yet developed the stamina to control yourself. You have probably were training yourself to be easily triggered. If you train yourself to be easily triggered with the little nuances around you, that is actually your automatic response. Because our brain is like a computer. The more and more you respond in anger, you become an angry person. And the root cause of anger, as I said, is because of bitterness, unforgiveness, resentment. There's always the reason why you snap. There's a reason why you're triggered. Maybe a person triggered you because of what she said, but the question is, Why are you triggered? Just because she said something about maybe the choices that you're making, or maybe your weight or whatever, it has a root cause. Maybe you were criticized as a child by your mom, by your sisters, or your dad, that you probably are too chubby, or they made a comment about your weight. I don't know. So every trigger has a root cause. You are not triggered with no apparent reason. So you have to figure out, why am I being triggered? Why is it that I snap when this person says something about or criticize me of this matter? It's probably because of also of your unhealed wounds. As I said, if you were highly criticized as a child by your mom or by your dad, and somehow you become an adult and you're easily still triggered being criticized, most likely it is rooted from your childhood memories. So you really have to understand where it's coming from. So here are the ways. I don't want to spend more time on here. The ways for you to really get better, and I am becoming redundant on my channel, but it is important to keep repeating myself so that it is going to embed in your psyche. Number one is spend time with yourself. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the book C.S. Lewis. This is, again, the screw tape lessons. And the devil even knows this, that you have to spend time with yourself. It says that, didn't you foresee that it would just kill by contrast all the trumpery which you have been so laboriously teaching him to value? And that sort of pleasure which the book and the walk gave him was the most dangerous of all, that it would peel off from his sensibility the kind of trust you have been forming on it, and make him feel that he was coming home, recovering himself. As a preliminary to detaching him from the enemy, this is what the enemy, referring to God, you wanted to detach him from himself and had made some progress in doing so. Now all that is undone. So again, this screw tape letter is, again, the letters between the demons and the uncle demons, and trying to teach his nephew demon. And the patient, of course, are humans. So you're the patient, I'm the patient. So they were having discussion, or the uncle was trying to tell the nephew that now, because you are unable to look after your patient, which is the human, of spending time with himself and walking outside, and you gave him that liberty to spend time with himself in nature, and you have given him the liberty to read a book that he shouldn't have. Now we're screwed, because one of the reasons why God wants us to have is to get to know ourselves. Isn't it what Jesus said? The kingdom of God is within you. You have to be able to understand that the knowledge, the key of knowledge, is actually within you. It is about you learning about who you are, but without questioning who you are, being by yourself, without conforming to the culture, you're never going to understand who you are. That's what I said. The distraction of the enemy, the devil, the world, the system, is that they want you to be busy and not have time to reflect or contemplate of who you are. Why is it that there's so many distractions in the world? Television, social media, cell phones, gambling, addictions. These are by design. Why is it so hard to read a book or spend time in nature? It is by design. Because the moment you have the moment to think about who you are and why you're here, that is why the devil are constantly trying to tell you that you are going to just part of the system. The moment you get out of the system, you are not going to conform to the system. That's what you call do not conform to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. But how can you renew your mind when you're constantly bombarded with the opinions around you and you never bother asking those questions? Why do we do the things that we do? Exactly my point. I mean, I have learned that there are things in our lives that we grow up being taught, and then you wake up one day. What's the point to all of this? What is the point to, for instance, I am not trying to disregard education because I am for it. I am an ongoing student. I love to educate myself. However, I always like to question, why is it that the education system, it is not by design to make us successful. It is not by design to make us to become a better humans, to a better communicator. Because in fact, communication is one of the things to become a better human, because communication is how we can solve problems and articulate the things that is going on between our head and our heart. But why is it that when we go to school, we were never taught about communication skills and then money? So there are things in our lives that we were taught. History, there's nothing wrong about knowing your history, but other things that are unnecessary, and yet we never really use them when we grow up, like something I think about chemistry, or not chemistry, algebra or other math that is so convoluted or chaotic or just plain boring, and yet we never really use them, right? But there are things that now as an adult, I'm thinking to myself, when it comes to being married, nobody talked to us about how to be prepared of being a wife or a husband or being a woman in this life. Nobody prepared us to and how to navigate being a mother, because you're going to be a mother eventually. So there are things that we somehow as a society are trying to deem as important, but in reality they're not that as important. It is somehow the kind of disparity that is happening in our world today, that we value things that are actually not valuable to begin with. And so we are also how to understand that when you want to deal with your trauma, you have to understand what you want to achieve in life. A man without a vision, he or she will perish. So as I said, it has to have, you need to have a purpose. You got to have a purpose in life. You cannot keep on being stuck in your past and contemplate on your past all the time. There must be a point in life where you said, okay, enough is enough. I've grieved with my past. So for one thing, I'm not saying that you should rush your healing. You must also heal. However, you cannot be stuck there. So when I was trying to heal myself, I did not just sit around doing nothing. I kept myself busy. Okay, that's another sign. You must keep yourself busy. You have to have some kind of a goal, and you need to have some kind of an ambition, because a mind that is wandering and has nothing to think about, you are going to eventually think about things, distractions usually. A mind that is empty, the devil is going to fill it up with some junk. Okay, so this is why it says in the Bible, you have to fill up your mind with things that are above, the things that are good, to think about things that are worthy and worthy of praise, and to think things that are excellent and worthy of praise, to fix your thoughts on the things that are worthy, the things that are pleasant, the things that are positive. Because if your mind is empty, as I said, you cannot empty your mind, because most likely it's going to be filled with junk and filled with lots of things in this world. Be careful, as I said, what you watch, what you listen to, and you are going to most likely become inundated with propaganda, indoctrination, with falsehood. So you have to be careful the kind of teachings that you listen. You need to have analytical reasoning and ask yourself the question, do I really believe what they're selling, or do I believe what they're actually telling me? You have to understand those questions. Being curious is, of course, learning about the difference between the truth and the lie, especially today. As I have done a podcast a long time ago of the rise of AI, which is the rise of the deception in this world. We cannot really be deceived, but we're being forewarned that in these last days, many people will be deceived, especially with AI today. We are being told in the Bible. I mean, we were told this a long time ago by the apostles, that in the last days and the latter days, people are going to be more wicked, and they're going to deceive you even more, giving misinformation, disinformation, to twist the lie from the truth, and to making a lie the truth and the truth the lie. And you need to have discernment. And I think it's more important now than ever to be discerning, not just believe every word that you say, whatever you see on social media or news, and you're going to give it a face value. You have to question things, really. But somehow, because of AI, it's getting harder and harder today to prove between the lie and the truth. Isn't it the truth that nowadays you thought that person is looking the same, and actually see somebody copying the same content, and they just made a different kind of a website or different kind of a channel name? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, did I not watch the same content from this person? And they copied it word for word, and actually it was an AI generated. And that's exactly the kind of treachery that we're dealing with today. Some people are, as I said, stealing information and making a content out of you, and they just recreating it and making a different name out of it, and they're gonna make money out of it. And it's what you call robbery. And let me not linger there. And last but not the least, this is why when you're trying to heal from your trauma, you learn to be present and do not worry about the future. Matthew 6:25-34, it says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and body more than clothes? Look at the birds in the air, and they do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to life?" And so I'm going to move forward here. It says that, "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." So that is my last point, that if you're trying to heal from your past self to your trauma, from trauma to your new self, and trying to emerge into this new version of you, you just have to trust God and do not worry about your life, because today is sufficient. Take it one day at a time, one step after another. I will have to emphasize that, because sometimes we are impatient. We try to make it fast, and then we think to ourselves, I thought I'm already better. I thought that this pain is going to go away. Why do I feel crappy sometimes? And why do I still feel sad or depressed or tired? And it's part of the healing journey. Sometimes there are going to be bad days and good days. There are days that you feel as though you have progressed in your journey, and there are days that you feel as though you are going back 5 steps backwards. And it's part of your healing journey. Do not be deceived by the propaganda and ask you the question, or make you feel bad, as though healing must be something that can be rushed. Okay, you have to work at your own pace, because depending on the kind of trauma that you have dealt with, no one can rush you from recovering. You really have to understand your body, your mind, your soul, of what is telling you. Stop listening to the people around you who gives you unsolicited advice and says, well, because it's been happening 20 years ago, you should be better by now. Yes, it's not that easy. It's complicated. Healing is complicated, because you know why? You will never forget what happened to you. You're going to carry that memory throughout your whole life. Okay? So this is why you must change the way you think about yourself. You must shift about your perspective in your healing journey. Whatever God meant to harm you, whatever the devil meant to harm you, God will turn around for good, rather. And everything worked together for good to those whom God called for his purpose, for his purpose and for his calling. And so healing is that you just have to understand that there's always a purpose in everything. There's always a silver lining. And just like the nature, you cannot force your healing journey. And lately, it made me understand that nature, the moment that I have brought plants and flowers inside my patio, I was trying to understand flowers. I was sitting in my patio a few days ago watching these roses, and it dawned on me that roses are the flowers that one of the things that I enjoyed collecting them. I enjoyed watching them when they grow, but you cannot force them to grow. Like the orchids, they have its season. They have its time of when to grow. No matter how many times you're gonna nag or yell at the roses and cultivate them and pluck them and transfer them to a different pot, they're not going to bud. No matter what you do, they're not going to sprout. They're not going to grow the way that you want them to grow. The same thing with our healing journey. There is no such thing as rushing, forcing, and hoping that maybe next year I will be much better. Just like a rose, just like a plant, there is a time and a season. You just have to be patient. You just have to be still and know that eventually, when you don't give up and when you don't give up hope, you are going to feel much better. You're going to feel as though, okay, now I understand why God had to carry me throughout this journey. Now I understand why I had to go through the pains, because it's going to make you better, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you were before. So that is my reminder for today, and have a wonderful day ahead of you.